Shalom, good evening, and welcome to our daily class in Nachman on Patreon. We're holding in the third Torah of Likutei Moharan in the, about halfway through, and it is an amazing Torah that I've done some outlining just to give us an update to catch up to where we were. That's the nature of these things, because we're entering a staircase and you get lost if you don't know where you are on the ladder. So we have been talking about the idea of music, the idea of the holy singer and the unholy singer. We're talking about the portal in heaven where the song of holiness comes to the singer, and the portal on the other side where song comes to the unholy singer. Now these two portals, of course, I have names and locations that the Rebbe is going to give us now. And along with this, we've learned, though, that how do you fix the influence of hearing an unholy singer? Because remember, when a person sings, they're emoting a very deep part of their soul. And if their soul is trapped in the wrong places, so we end up receiving an influence we don't necessarily want to receive. And that influence, we call it evil, we call it the other side. It has a lot of names. It's not the important question. The question that's of importance is how that influences us. Now, if you hear certain songs and certain music and it brings you down, it makes you anxious, upset, etc., then it's a sign that this music is not doing what it's supposed to do. Unless, of course, you like to listen to music that makes you anxious and upset, which I assume is not the case. But so we say the Rebbe teaches us that the way we fix this unholy music is by learning Talmud Bavli at night, because nighttime is the time of the imbalance in the psychic atmosphere between good and evil, that evil has the upper hand at night. And so when it has the upper hand, we have to have an equal and equivalent power to fight that negative power, and that's called Talmud Bavli. As Rebbe Nachman said earlier, it's b'machashakim hushivani, the rabbis say, that the Talmud Bavli is called darkness. So it is the Torah that takes the Jewish people through darkness from the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash until this day. So it is the Torah of the clarifications of many questions that otherwise we wouldn't have no idea how to give psak din in a lot of areas of Jewish life, we should say. Okay, so by listening to Torah at night, we fix the voice of the fallen singer, and this actually surrounds a person with a thread of kindness during the day. Now that thread of kindness is not a nice drawing or a metaphor. It is a reality in your heart. There are times where you feel good for no reason, and there are times where you feel kind of ratty for no reason. And maybe if you track it down, you can find the reasons. But when you rise at night and you learn Torah and you pray the early morning prayer, you feel a sense of goodness around you the entire day. That is what the rabbis call the thread of kindness, the chut shel chesed. And if you've never done it, it is very advisable to do it sometime for yourself, to get just the feeling, the sense that all day long, wow, what kind of day today? I feel so good. Why do I feel so good? Well, I feel so good because I got up at night, I learned Torah, and I prayed, and I felt like, something happened, and it's that thread of kindness. Okay, so with all of that said, we are going to introduce also now the idea of where these portals are. And of course, the portal of the music of the holiness is the kingship, the malchut, the lowest sphere on the tree, the malchut of kingship. Of holiness. And on the other side, there is the malchut of the sitra hara, the kingship of the other side. And that's where the unholy singer is getting his power from. So as usual, it's mida keneged mida, the holy singer and the unholy singer. We've seen this throughout Jewish history in our generation. There's always a singer who's on top of the non-religious, let's call it the other side's song, and there's always a singer that's on the top of the Jewish world, the holy side of music. Now you could say, well, there are not many Jews that are singing on either side and both sides, and you're probably right. We're talking in a general format and a general consciousness of where our power is coming from. Because you could take good energy and turn it bad, and you could take bad energy and turn it good too. It depends on where a person's at and where their heart is at the time of their singing. The minute a person does tshuva, Rebbe Nachman says, even if you moan and groan and kretsk and feel, you're already changing your lane on the highway. You're turning around and going back towards the holiness. So a person can do tshuva in a second, and that second turns the permutation of the light from God's light to the opposite, the absence of his light, which we call darkness. So that can happen very fast, and it often does. And so we should be careful how we judge. But if you listen to music and it brings you down, then it's a pretty good sign. Now he begins, V'it b'kitvei arizal, ki hatziporim shebeklipa hem mochin d'malchut deklipa. That the birds, he uses the symbol of these birds for both the source of music on holiness and unholiness, and the birds of the other side are called the mental power of the kingship. The mochin of the kingship of the klipa. Right? The mental power of the ruling force of the other side. Lefichach nishtabach David lifnei Shaul, and for this reason King David was praised before King Shaul. Why? The Yedan again, because Shaul said about David, he knows how to play. He knows how to play the good music, the holy music that inspires you, that elevates you. Ki anigina hi binyana malchut. And now he tells us another deep secret. The song itself, writing a song, is a building of kingship. Now, this is a very esoteric idea, but we can understand a little bit that the tree of life is a series, an array of forces. Starting from the bottom, which are the heaviest or the densest energy, if you will, kingship, malchut, military, police, din. And it goes up the tree through the forces that are connected in all places on the body, until the mind, into the keter, which is the highest place that rests upon a person's head. And that is the idea of that which makes the king king, is his transcendental intellect. The king is the one who has that special relationship to God. And so there is, of course, the Mida Keneged Mida, the other side, the kingship of the Klipa, where there is also these singers, these birds that take the song and they go where they go with it. But either way, we're talking about this building of kingship means bringing all the forces together. If someone said, guess what, you're going to be a king tomorrow, Shmuel, how are you going to build your kingship? Well, got a lot of questions to answer. Where's your capital going to be? Where's your palace going to be? Where's the throne room going to be? Who are my ministers going to be? Who are my guards? Who is my militia? Who's got the weapons? Who's got the money? Who's the treasurer? Who's writing the checks? It's a lot of work to put together a kingship. But that's what we're talking about here. It's the gathering of all the forces into one place, because that's what a king essentially is. And ultimately, the King of Kings is unbelievably king over a universe this great and this broad and this deep. Okay. So Shaul praised David because he knew David had this special power, this building of the kingship. And of course, David proved it by building the real kingship of Israel. And this is proof that David was really fitting to be anointed by Shmuel and Navi before Shmuel passed away. Because David was anointed as a young person, and only later did he actually accede to the throne, take power in Hebron, and then move his seat of power to Jerusalem. It took years. 7 years actually, that David was in Hebron and he was consolidating power there. Because even though at a certain point Shaul died, the people were not so easily moving parties. Sound familiar? From Shaul to David. This is written in Tehillim, Me'achar alot hevio. After the alot, usually it's alot shachar, the early morning, they brought him. Hayinu, me'achar minikot. Or what is it? Because after the minikot means those that nurse, right? They give over the life force, they give over the milk. Right? Hayinu netzach v'hod. Of course, those are the forces in the tree called netzach and hod. Victory and splendor. The right and left thigh. These are the forces that take the upper powers of Chochmah Bina Adat, Chesed Gevurah and Tiferet. They feed all of those feed right into Netzach and Hod, and then Netzach and Hod send that energy down, blended, so to speak, to build the Malchut along with Yesod. So that's the mini coat on the tree of life, and they're giving over that power of Netzach and Hod kihem minikim leneviim, and they give the life force to the prophets. So this is another known idea, and the pt2 in Tikkunei Zohar tells us this. The Netzach and Hod are the place that the prophets would take their life force from. That's where they would get their inspiration. And they are the two forces, the two pillars. If you want to build an ancient palace back in the day, you start with two pillars. Somewhere you're going to have those two pillars. And that's the main gate of the city, the main gate of the palace, the main gate of the throne room. It's always these two pillars. Because that's how you make a doorway. But that's, of course, on a very gashmi, physical example. On the spiritual level, you have to have these two powers to draw the upper energy, mental power of mochin, of the heart, to be the king. You have to have all those things in place to produce kingship. Okay. This is what the great sages whose stories we've been learning throughout these early Torahs of Likutei Moharan. Right? They showed me, one of my friends showed me this great frog. Remember, the frog was 60 cities large. And then it was consumed by a raven. And then the raven was consumed by a snake. And then so on, all the way until the raven went up in a tree. And they say, how great was the tree that could hold this raven, that could hold this frog that held 60 cities. What do all these symbols really represent? This is a map of symbols of spiritual reality, that the wisdom of Rabbi Avraham is he could take a few words and give us a whole structure of part of the repair of the world. So he tells us, La Krukta, which is Sfardea, Perush Rabbeinu Shmuel, Sfardea, Hayinu Tzafar Dea. Now, tzafar is the lashon of joining, or bringing tzofer. Tzafar is also the lashon like announcing. And of what? Of dea, of knowledge. That first we have to bring the mind power down into the heart, and then bring that power down into the lower region of speech, of expression in the physical world, and all of it gets lifted back up. So this process is going to begin with this frog at the top, this Svardea. And what does he do? Well, he tells us, first of all, we learn early, Kara Begaron, he called out from the throat, Hayinu sheniginam nishechet mimenu. That this frog had the power of the throat. Like you can hear the frogs, crying out in the swamp at night. Well, they're very little creatures, but they have a very big voice. So this is kind of like the idea here of this voice that's drawn into the narrow place, and akra dahagronia kamave shitim bate. Right? We said that this frog was 60 houses big. This is a big entity. Hayinu ayedek maj mitaken bechinat kara garon. But he's really asking the question homiletically. How do you fix this calling from the throat? How do you fix song? How do you make your song go from unholy to holy? It seems like a worthy thing to know, especially if you're a rock and roller, especially if you want to elevate your music to bring God closer into the world. Now, if you don't, you probably never hear these teachings. You won't merit to hear how Rebbe Nachman teaches us from the Zohar and the other holy books. Well, he tells us how do we fix the voice through the 60 houses. What are these 60 houses? Sound familiar? 60, remember? Shas, right? Shishim Masechtot, 60 portions of the Talmud. He tells us exactly. The 16 books of Talmud, Rabbeinu Shmuel, Talmuda de Ka'amala Ayinu Shrimad Talmud. Right? And he's learning Talmud is the way that we fix the voice. From the unholy to the holy. Va'ata Tanina Bala'a, and then along came Rabbah, this idea of a Tana, a holy teacher. Kamarla, we're talking about him. Ayinu Ayidei Shilmad Shelo Lishma. But he's coming to learn Lo Lishma. If you learn Torah for any reason, whether for money, or for honor, or for, to get attention, whatever it is, or even if you learn Torah because I want to fix my voice so I'm a better singer, or you learn Torah because you want to be a better writer, that's still not called for God's sake, for God's name, for His reputation. Then the snake comes along and swallows it up. So it is true that the frog, the voice, the calling of the voice that ate up the 60 houses, the 60 masechtot, the snake that comes along and eats all of that is the one that's coming to do it, not for the sake of Hashem, not for the right reasons. So you see how the metaphor works, that once the snake comes to eat the frog, then all of a sudden it's gone to the other side. The snake is always a symbol of the other side. Rabba Kamarla Hainu Ayada Shilmad B'Shvil Shitakare Rabbi. And Rabba clarifies it's because the person wants to be called Rebbe. He lives in a Jewish or religious community, and the guy who gets the most honor is usually the rabbi. And that's the way Hashem set up the system. And people see the rabbi getting the honor, and they want the rabbi's honor. For sure. Why does he get to sit in the big chair in front of the synagogue? Well, each person has to deal with that himself, because it has to do with our personal desire for honor, our need for attention, our focus on ourselves, all those good things that we need to break. Fast as you can. Because they'll take all the Torah that we learn and turn it the wrong way. V'ata pushkansa, this black raven came along, and he says, Orev, ayinu ayidei shilma b'layla. He says, but if you learn at night, the Orev is dark. It's a black raven. It symbolizes the night. If he's learning at night, milashon arvit, which is, of course, also Orev, is the same letters as arvit. The same root letters, I should say. Ubala'an, he swallowed it. Ayinu umegen alav min nachash. So you see what happened? The raven came and ate up the frog in order that the snake could not get it. Ainu salik yati ilana. And that's when it says that in the bird, when that raven grabbed the frog, that is the voice, he went up and sat on the tree. And the Marsha says, who's Bechinat Avraham. And that idea is the idea of Avraham Avinu, Shekatuv Etzlo, is written about him, Ve'ita Eshel, that Avraham literally planted or founded an Eshel, which is, of course, a place to eat, sleep, and drink. Shehu Bechinat Chesed, which is the idea of Chesed. The providing people a place to eat, drink, and sleep is pretty much all they need to stay alive. Clothing helps, but I'm sure Avraham Avinu had a few extra robes around. And this is the chesed, and that's what we learned already, this thread of kindness that surrounds a person when he learns at night. And when he prays early in the morning, shemshach alav, that is drawn upon him, megein alav min hanach. And that's what protects him from that snake. Come and see how great is the power of this tree that held up this raven that swallowed this frog that was the size of 60 cities. That Rabbah shocked himself. He came. It's like he entered into a trance of wonder. Why? Shekol kach gavar aleinu chasdo, that God's kindness is so great upon us. It's a nice idea, to think about. God's kindness is straight upon us. Shafilu azeh yachol lagen, that even on this, he can play music, he can sing. That the frog that has been trapped and taken away, that holy voice, can be protected when it's attached to the tree of life. Done by who? By the nighttime, by the raven, by playing music, singing the music of the Talmud at night. And that will take the voice of the singer to the holy place. And he will produce different music of another variety completely than what we're commonly exposed to, shall we say. Okay. So there in itself, we see just one piece of this homiletical interpretation of the Rebbe, and how he takes this story from Rabbi Bar Chana from the Gemara and explains it in a way that finally makes sense. Can you imagine the hundreds of years people have been learning these Gemarot and they're really not sure what it's about? You have to be a Kabbalist to understand how he derived this metaphor and explained it. And Rabbi Bar Chana was certainly on the level, shall we say, if we only knew his level. Okay, but we do know that he is the author of many of these very esoteric teachings in the Shas, telling us that he was a cut above many other rabbis. Because there are some rabbis that are actually very profound and brilliant, that are giving laws in encyclopedia fashion, right? Encyclopedic. A lot of big words tonight. Gotta be careful when that happens. So, those guys that learn, that have that kind of mind to hold all those halachot, they're like the Gemara calls them, they're like the bread. They're like the balei chitaya, the master of the wheat, the one who grows wheat. Everybody wants to see him every day you go to the shuk. Everybody, they're always selling bread. And that's how he makes his literally his bread and butter. Pardon that crossover reference. But still, we see here that this story is really teaching us about how that voice is taken back to the holiness by the Talmud learned at night. And that's the symbol of the raven who takes the frog. And it's a funny image. The idea of the frog is this symbol of the voice. But, there is a famous midrash, and we'll have to end with this, but continue tomorrow, that says when David HaMelech finished Sefer Tehillim, do you know what that was that day? For any artist, for any author, it had to be the greatest day in his life to finish Tehillim. a book that would make millions and millions of people do tshuva and guide them in tshuva and be a watchword, a path for Jewish people for thousands of years. What a great achievement Tehillim is. And it says that the day that David HaMelech finished writing Tehillim, he knew it was with Ruach HaKodesh, but he didn't even know how much of the future was predicted in the book. Rebbe Nachman says that. He couldn't even fathom all that was there. And the Midrash says that after David finished Tehillim, Tazuach Dato, that he got a little bit, a little bit self-excited, a little bit over happy with himself. And a voice from heaven called out and says, "Look over there. You see that frog?" "Yeah, I see a frog over there." He says, "His singing is more pleasant to me than yours." Like, how can you say that? How could you say that one of 5 billion frogs, that their song is more beautiful and more important to God than Tehillim? You can't say that. But if you understand that for a split second, David had a little bit too much pride in Tehillim, having been the author of it, then it changes the whole fix of the music. The whole vibe of the music changes with that. And that's what Hashem, the Bat Kol, is pointing out to David. When you get this way, I'd rather listen to the frog sing, because the frog is naturally humble. But, of course, when David is himself, his humble self, then the whole world gets benefit from Tehillim. I don't even know. I wonder how many countries have translated Tehillim. It'd be a good thing to look up on, Rav Google. So, this is why the frog is used here as the symbol of this voice. Because it reminds us that even if you write Tehillim, you still got to be humble. Because you're in God's world. And, some people, it's hard to be humble. They have no reason at all to not be humble. King David had all the reasons to not be humble. And yet he must also learn that lesson even on the day that he finishes writing the Psalms. So I think we'll stop with that little piece of sobering information and kind of sit with it about ourselves, because a lot of us have little achievements in our lives that can tend to make us, lose our humility, and that's not good. And because we don't want to take from the glory of God, it's His glory. Let's give it back to Him. And that's the secret of life. God bless all of you. Welcome back to a new week on Patreon. We'll see you again tomorrow. We'll continue this amazing Torah, and tell your friends, come on out, hear some of these teachings by Rebbe Nachman. Explains reality in ways we've never heard before. God bless all of you. Shavua Tov.